Любі, всіх дуже раді бачити, усіх вітаємо. Зараз буквально декілька хвилиночок ми доєднуємо всіх охочих, всіх тих, хто зареєструвався та отримав посиланнячко на наш Zoom. І поки ми збираємося, я озвучу декілька таких прохань. Не хочеться так дуже різко казати, що це правила. Декілька наших прохань, і якщо ми будемо їх дотримуватися, нам всім буде комфортно сьогодні і дуже цікаво. Багато хто з вас на уроці в суботу разом з Девідом поставив запитання. Ми всі ці запитання записали, вони всі разом зі мною зараз лежать. Тому, будь ласка, якщо ви ставили питання, пишіть мені в особисті. Привіт, я в суботу ставив запитання. Запитання було ось таке, дайте мені, будь ласка, звук, і я дам вам звук, ви зможете поставити запитання, у вас буде на це час. Я одразу попереджаю, що для того, щоб ми увімкнули вам мікрофон, нам дуже важливо вас бачити. Тому, будь ласка, якщо є можливість, вмикайте камеру, щоб ви бачили, що це дійсно ви. І якщо раптом у вас немає змоги, тому що буває різне, ми знаємо, нас дивляться взагалі з різних куточків України і не тільки, напишіть мені в особисті, що це я справжній, я не бот, і напишіть своє питання. Сподіваюся, вам буде дуже цікаво. Завдяки Девіду ми сьогодні можемо зустрітися із дуже класною, цікавою людиною. Тому гарного нам всім уроку, гарного заняття, гарної лекції. So, David, I think we can start.
Okay, well, it's so nice to see you, everybody. I am so excited about today. It is my morning, and I know that in Ukraine, it is your afternoon, and it's just soon after 5 p.m. And so I am David, and I'm coming to you all the way from the Canadian Arctic. And it is very cold out there, so I had to put my parka on and my mittens on this morning. And it really did not matter because we have a show for you today. It's going to be an exciting show because we have this amazing guy joining us in about 10 minutes. And I have to tell you, I was thinking about this last night. I kept thinking, oh my goodness, Chris Hadfield. This is the guy who flew the space shuttle twice. He was the commander of the ISS for 5 months. And this guy has actually walked in space. And I wonder what it feels to walk in space. Well, I know that we're going to have the chance to ask him all these questions, but I have to tell you, I am so thrilled with the fact that Chris agreed to come on this afternoon because he is a very, very, very busy guy. He's basically being asked by lots of people throughout the world to come and talk. And I am just so pleased that when I said to him, I said, Chris, would you come and talk to the Ukrainian students, Ukrainian children right away? It was like, I'll do it. I'll be there. So I am just thrilled. And so very, very fabulous show that we're going to have. And he's going to be joining us in a few minutes. So before we do that, just sort of remind everybody, this is what we're talking about. He flew this space shuttle. Imagine flying this into space and trying to figure out all those computers and all those instruments and tools and doing experiments. And at the same time, looking down on Earth. I thought, wow. What an amazing thing to be doing. And what's really neat is that Chris had this dream about being a pilot when he was a very young person. So which says to me that don't ever let go of those dreams. Always keep thinking about those dreams and then start working towards making them happen. So obviously very talented person, and look where his dream got him to. Along with that, he was in the International Space Station for 5 months. Can you believe that? Imagine being up in space for 5 months and figuring out all sorts of things that can only be figured out in space, because there are experiments that we would try to do here on Earth, but because of our gravity, because of all the different things that make Earth what it is, we wouldn't be able to do them. So Chris and a bunch of other scientists and astronauts, they go up to the International Space Station, and they literally do experiments after experiments after experiments. And because of those experiments, there are things that we have here on planet Earth that are here because of those wonderful things that they're figuring out up in the International Space Station. So 5 months there. And what's really neat is that this guy actually, this guy actually, while he lived in the International Space Station, he was thinking about writing books. So talk about being talented. He wrote 2 books. And my understanding is like he continues to write. The most famous one, at least you know that I know most people talk about, is the one that's titled Chris Hadfield, An Astronaut's Guide to Life. And if you haven't had a chance to read it, try to Google it. And it's an amazing book because he talks about the things that he learned about being an astronaut and how those things help him be a better person here on planet Earth. So this book is full of stuff. And so while he was there, he was obviously learning how to be a really good astronaut and a good scientist and how to be a really good author. But here's the other thing. He learned how to be a fabulous singer. He knows how to play the guitar, and he did this video up there. Maybe you've watched it, maybe you've seen it, maybe you've heard about it. I'm going to play it, and let's enjoy it because he has an amazing voice too, and he's a fabulous guitarist. So here is Chris Hadfield, astronaut, Commander Chris Hadfield, singing a song in space. So give me 1 minute. So it's almost going, and as soon as it works, I'm going to move the screen to your side so you can see it.
Control to Major Tom. Ground control to Major Tom. Lock your Soyuz hatch and put your helmet on. 10. Ground control to Major Tom. 7. Commencing countdown, engines on. 3. Detach from station and may God's love be with you. This is ground control to
So what an amazing astronaut he is, very talented. And so I am actually looking forward to introducing Chris. He's going to be joining us in about 2 minutes. So what are some of the things that crossed your mind as you were watching this? Does anybody want to share with me? What were things that were crossing your mind as you were watching this video?
Igor, can you start your video camera?
Ігоре, чи можете ви увімкнути камеру?
Hi. So I had some thoughts passing in my head, and one of them was that it is not easy to be an astronaut, I think.
I totally agree with you. I mean, when they get to this point, it's we're talking about years and years and years of practice, right? It didn't happen like overnight, and definitely did not happen because, oh, I was lucky. They practiced, they practiced, they practiced. And so we have somebody who obviously practiced so much, and of course, being very talented, got to where he is. And so I am very excited because he is just about to come on. Basically, my understanding is that any second he will be jumping in.
Okay.
Have we asked questions for astronaut?
The questions for the astronauts, they're going to be, is that what I just heard, Valeria? So you want to know about the questions for the astronauts?
I have my questions.
Okay, so let's wait for Chris to come on, and then we will be able to start asking him questions. And he is so excited about answering them. So just give him a minute. He should be coming on any second now.
Okay. I want to be astronaut too.
You know something? I remember being your age and I wanted to be an astronaut too. It was such a special time, and don't give up on those dreams, because like he did, he started thinking and dreaming about being an astronaut at a very young age. And he became a pilot, and then he started learning science. He went to school, he learned engineering. He was learning as much as he could about science. And that's why at the end of the day, he was actually chosen to basically, imagine, be the commander of the International Space Station. That's a hard job.
And now Chris is joining us.
Okay.
I think, David, you can stop share your screen.
Okay, and so if you can please stop it for me, that would be great. I always have problems doing that.
I
You
stopped
have
your
you-
I stopped
yeah,
your sharing.
it's already stopped.
Okay, perfect.
Chris, hello, Chris.
Hello, how are you?
Hello, Chris. Wonderful to have you here this morning for us, you and I, and afternoon for Kyiv and Ukraine. We're very excited. I am Chris. I'm David Falcon. I'm a principal here in Nunavut. And I would like to introduce you to students in Ukraine, and they are all over Ukraine. And your presentation is being fed live through YouTube. So Chris, on behalf of everybody, thank you for coming on. We appreciate your presence.
It is my great pleasure to be joining with people from so many different places from across Ukraine and from Nunavut, and I'm down in another part of Canada right now also. So thank you for inviting me in. And I've seen there's a great long list of questions from the students across Ukraine, and I'm eager to get to those questions. Just for background, my name is Chris Hadfield. I'm a pilot, and I'm an engineer, and I'm an astronaut, and I've flown in space 3 times, and I've commanded the International Space Station. And now I do a lot of different things, including writing books and making television shows and helping space companies and talking to students. So I have lots of things going on, and I'm ready to try and answer any questions that people have.
Okay, so we will start with the questions, and this is when I pull out and the students take over. So Lydia?
Yes, we have some questions, and we have our beautiful kids. So Timur, please start.
Yes, thank you. Hello, Chris. Did you ever use the Canadarm2 in the International Space Station? And if
Wow,
yes, how it is?
Timur, it's great that everybody speaks English. Everybody remember to say your name for me, just so that I don't mispronounce your name. But is your name Timur? Is that right?
Yeah.
Great, Timur, nice to meet you. On the space station, there is a huge robot arm. It's as big as the biggest tree in the Ukraine. Like, it's a gigantic thing. You could hardly wrap your arms around it. And not only did I use it, but I helped build it onto the space station. I went outside on spacewalks and put it together and powered it up. We actually had to unfold it and bolt it together, this gigantic arm. And then I was lucky enough on the inside of the spaceship, both on the space shuttle and on the space station, to be the very first Canadian to operate Canadarm on the space shuttle and the one on the space station. So I've been a very lucky man.
Was it hard to you to operate it?
Well, like any machine, like a bicycle, at first it's hard because you don't know how to ride one, right? You don't know how to do it. But when you study and practice and figure out how it works, and then maybe somebody helps you and teaches you, then it gets easier, and then you know how. So it's extremely complicated, but once you know how, then it's pretty easy.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we have another question, please, Sophia.
I wanted to ask you, okay, my name is Sophia, and I wanted to ask, what do you eat in space?
Hi, Sophia. The space station is a long way from everywhere. And so your food has to be delivered by a little spaceship. And so that means it might take a long time for your food to get to you. So there's very little fresh food. Most of the food is the type of shelf that can stay, or the type of food that can stay on the shelf for months. So, it's, if you imagine if you never had a refrigerator or a freezer or a stove or a microwave, if all of your food had to just be dry or room temperature. So it's that sort of food. And a lot of food comes in little packages. So here's how it works, Sophia. You get hungry and you float into the pantry and you think, what would I like to eat? Maybe, I don't know what you like, Sophia, but maybe today I want some corn and I want some ham. I don't know, whatever. So you float up into the vegetables cupboard and you reach in and all of the little packages of vegetables are all floating around weightless. So what I would do is I'd pull one out and I'd look at it and it would go, no, peas. And I'd put peas back. And then I'd reach in and pull out another one, oh, carrots, put it back in till finally, here's corn, great. And then on the package, it says how much water and for how long. And so it might say, I don't know, whatever, 200 milliliters of water, and you'd slide it over this needle sticking out of the wall. And then you'd turn a knob and push a button, and you could either push warm or hot water. And so with corn, I'd have hot water, and it would carefully fill up the package. And then it would say, wait, 12 minutes. So you'd shake it, and then you'd just Velcro it to the wall, and you'd wait 12 minutes. And then when it was time, you'd carefully hold it, you'd get your scissors, you'd carefully snip it open, and then you'd grab your spoon, and you don't want to flick it because corn would float all over the room. And it has to be sticky corn, like with creamed corn. Otherwise, little bits of corn are going to float everywhere. And then you could eat it. And you never use a plate because plates need gravity. So you just eat everything out of the package, and you eat every tiny little bit, and then crumple the package up super tight and put it into our trash. And that's what eating on a spaceship is like. It wasn't, I wouldn't go to space for the food, but it was pretty good, and it kept me healthy. So, and I was glad that there was lots of variety up there. I was lucky.
Thank you. And Chris, at the same time, we have some question from our YouTube account. So, Chris, how did you feel in space?
From the YouTube account, thank you, Lydia. How did I feel? Let's see, you're weightless, so that feels like magic. I mean, it feels like you have a superpower. Like you do have a superpower. You can fly. You're like an X-Man or Superwoman or something. You can fly. So that's a wonderful feeling. You're super busy because the space station is really just a big laboratory with hundreds of experiments. So you're busy from when you wake up until you go to sleep. But mostly I felt really lucky because I dreamed about being an astronaut since I was a boy. And I grew up in a country that didn't used to have astronauts. And I worked and worked and worked and got a chance to fly in space 3 times and to actually command the International Space Station. So I felt the work and the responsibility and the luck, but mostly I just felt joyfully lucky to be there and to see the world that way.
Thank you. And we have another question, please, Igor.
Hello, Chris. How do you entertain in space?
How do you entertain when you're in space? Well, you don't have much free time. The NASA and the other space agencies are always telling you, like the Canadian Space Agency, what to do now and what to do now. And every 5 minutes, it tells you what to do. Your schedule tells you what you're doing. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Anyway, and so there wasn't much free time, but when there was some time to entertain myself, I would read books. And we actually had a few paper books up on the space station, but mostly I had electronic books. And then I would call my family like this to talk to my family. I'd look out the window and take pictures of the world. And I took thousands of pictures of the world. And then I would write books, and then I would play music and write music. And I wrote and recorded a whole album of music when I was on the space station. So even though you're in a little tiny place and all disrupted, your imagination keeps going. And I think it's really important to find ways to not just entertain, but to challenge yourself and create and do new things. So I did that too.
Thank you, Chris. And please, Pavlo.
Hello, my name is Pavlo. You have been in space so many times. I believe you know very well about it, and I want to ask you, do you believe in other forms of life on other planets or galaxies?
Thank you, Pavlo. It doesn't really matter whether you believe there's life. I mean, you can believe something just like that. The real question, is there life or not? belief is, who cares what you believe? What matters is what's real. And is there life or not? Nobody knows the answer to your question, Pavlo. No one. We have never found life anywhere but Earth. And there's fun stuff on television and in the movies and science fiction, and lots of people think about it, and that's good. But the reality is the only life we have ever found is here on Earth. But we're looking. We're drilling into Mars right now, looking to see if we can find fossils, ancient life on Mars. And our biggest telescopes are looking out into the universe at other planets. And we've actually seen over 5,000 planets orbiting other stars. 5,000 planets. We know that every star now has at least one planet. And with the great big new telescope that we're just launched called the James Webb Telescope, it might be able to actually see the atmosphere of planets around other stars. And if you can look into the atmosphere, then maybe you can tell if it's the type of planet that has life or not. So it's likely that there's life somewhere else, but the universe is so incredibly big and so almost unbelievably old that I don't know if we're going to find life close to Earth or not, close enough that we can do anything about it. I think it makes it really important for us to recognize just how precious life is and how important it is to think about our planet and think about what we're going to do here on Earth, because I don't think life is all that common, especially intelligent life. And so we have a real responsibility, I think, to think about that.
Thank you, Chris. And I will ask you a question from our YouTube account. So, Chris, when are you planning to fly into space again? And one more question: what's the worst thing in space?
Well, I served a lot of years with the space agencies, but now I don't work for NASA or the Canadian Space Agency anymore. So I don't know that I'm going to fly in space again, but I flew 3 times, and it was incredibly lucky, and it was a very rich and interesting experience. But I work with space companies. I work with SpaceX, and I work with Virgin Galactic, and I work with Momentous and other space companies. And so maybe I'll fly in space again, but I already know that I've had more than my share. And what's the worst thing about space? Well, you're away from your family for a long time, like completely away, completely separated from family. And you never know how long it's going to last. You might be in space for 3 months, maybe 6 months, maybe a year. You don't know. So that there's that. But the goodness is way better than the badness. I loved being in space. Yeah, I was away from my family, but having such a rare experience and being able to go around the world thousands and thousands of times, getting to know our whole planet, and to do something really complicated and really important and really worthwhile. That was a lot of fun. So yeah, there's always some bad things, but there are always good things also. And I'm the type of person that tries to, work around the bad things so that I can really focus on the good things as much as possible in my life.
Thank you. And please, Yaroslav.
So I've got several questions for you. The first one is what types of aircrafts and spacecrafts did you fly?
Hi, Yaroslav. I've flown about 100 different types of aircraft, and I've flown lots of different types of spacecraft. I've been to 2 space stations. I flew the Soyuz. I flew 2 different space shuttles. So yeah, I've been very lucky. And the different aircraft, I still fly several different types of aircraft. Some of them very old, aircraft that were made before I was born, and some of them brand new, and some great big aircraft, the biggest airplanes in the world, and then right down to little one-person airplanes, little one-person glider airplanes without even a motor. So Yaroslav, I've been lucky, but I learned to fly when I was 14 and 15. There was a cadet program, and I learned to fly gliders when I was just 15 years old. And so I've been a pilot my whole adult life. And Yaroslav, I hope you get to fly airplanes a lot and be a pilot. It's a really interesting way to understand the world and to challenge yourself. What's your next question?
Also, the second question is, did you fly in the Concorde?
No, I never flew a Concorde. That was an amazing airplane, but no, I never had a chance to fly in the Concorde.
Okay, that were all of my questions. Thank you.
It's a pleasure to talk to you.
Міша Попов, будь ласка.
What do you do is garbage in a space?
And is your name Misha?
Yes.
Okay. What do you do with your garbage in space? Well, we try and have as little garbage as possible, but you always have a little bit of garbage, the packaging and whatever. So we crumple it up and crush it as much as we can to make it small. And then we stuff it into a bag. And now you got a bag full of garbage or trash. And then we would have a container for several of those bags of trash until the container was full. And then when one of our robot ships came up, one of the automatic ships with no people on it, we would then put all our garbage or our trash into that ship. And when it was full of trash, then we'd close the hatch and undock that ship, and it would undock and fly down into the atmosphere, and then it would burn up like a meteorite, just completely incinerate. So Misha, if you're ever looking at a sunbeam coming down, the really bright light from the sun, and you see some tiny little particles slowly falling down in a sunbeam, those might be little tiny particles of one of the spaceships full of garbage that we dropped off the space station. It's sort of like meteorites. Maybe you don't know, Misha, but the world gets hit by 40 tons of meteorites every day. 40 tons of rock hits the world every day, and it turns into that tiny dust burning up that falls down into the atmosphere as well. And so we just add a little bit to that, but that's what we do with our trash.
Thank you. And the next, Alex, please.
Hi, so my name is Mary, but this is my dad's computer. So I wanted to ask you, well, a lot of people dream to go to space, and you already flew to space. So what do you dream of now?
Hi, and you said your name is Laria, is that right?
Mary.
Mary, I'm sorry, Maria. Thank you, nice to meet you. And thank you to your dad, Alex, for letting us use the computer. I dream of all sorts of things, Mary. And I think life is interesting when you always are dealing with today's problems. And sometimes it's really hard and sometimes it's not so hard. But it's really important at the same time to be dreaming about stuff that can happen in the future. And then not just dreaming about it, but actually changing who you are in order to be able to do the things that you're dreaming of. And so when I was a little boy, I dreamed of being an astronaut. And so I thought, how am I ever going to be an astronaut? I'm from a place that doesn't have astronauts. But I thought, well, I need to study and I need to learn how complicated things work. I became an engineer, and I need to be a pilot because you fly spaceships. And so maybe I should learn to fly. And we train underwater. So I learned to swim, and then I learned to dive underwater and scuba dive. And so I think for me, having dreams and then changing who you are to be able to do those things you're dreaming about. And so later I thought, well, maybe I could learn to speak French. And so I studied and I learned. Et maintenant, je ne sais pas, peut-être vous parlez français aussi, mais maintenant je parle français. Unfortunately, I don't speak Ukrainian, but I thought maybe I could write a book. I mean, how do you write a book? So I studied and I learned, and now I've written 4 books, including Mary. This is one of them called The Darkest Dark. And it's a book about how not to be afraid, you know, on the difference between fear and danger. They're not always the same thing. And then I thought maybe I could write a thriller, exciting book. And so I wrote this one here, and this is my new book. And it's for sale all around the world. And imagine that. I'm a little kid from Canada who flies spaceships and airplanes as an engineer, but I had this dream of writing a book. And so I learned how, and then I worked and figured out how to write books. And I'm studying and learning things all the time, and working with a lot of different companies. And I love a day when I wake up and I've got a lot of important normal stuff to do, but I've got a few things that I'm dreaming of and that I can study from and work and learn about. And that's sort of how I treat every day, Mary. And I'm still just a little boy who's dreaming of things, even though I've been alive for 62 years.
Thank you. And I also speak a little bit of French. So yes, thank you very much.
Félicitations.
Thank you, Chris. And the next question from Sergey, будь ласка.
Hello, Chris, and I have a question. Did you miss home when you were in space?
Did I miss home when I was in space? Yes, I don't miss home. I mean, it's just a house, right? I miss people. You know, I miss the people that I'm not with. You know, because when you're having a really cool experience, or when you see something new, it's nice to be able to grab somebody that you love and say, hey, look at that, or to share experiences. So yeah, I miss, you know, I would have liked to have my family there with me, and I miss them. But you know, I try not to spend my time missing things. I try and spend my time instead doing things and loving what's happening and being involved in what's going on. And there's always, you know, good stuff and bad stuff going on. And I know for a lot of you, there's some really bad stuff going on right now. But if you look carefully, there's also good things happening. And I you know, sometimes it's not easy, but I think it's really important to not just miss things, but instead to, you know, to try it wherever you can and focus on the interesting, fun, cool, challenging, intellectual stuff that's going on. And so I think you could spend your whole time on a space station feeling sort of lonely and homesick, or you could spend your whole time on a space station going, holy cow, look out the window, I can see all of Europe, or I can see all of Australia, or look at the sunrise, you can see 16 sunrises a day, you know. So yeah, I missed that I wasn't close to my family and my friends, but it was a great place to be and a really interesting experience at the same time.
I have
One more question.
Yes. What did you do when you were bored in space?
What did I do when I was aboard in space? Well, the space station is a laboratory. It has hundreds of experiments. Some of the experiments are looking out at the universe to try and understand stars and planets and atoms. And then some of the experiments are inside. What can you do when there's no gravity? When things don't fall? How does the body behave differently? How do you balance? You know, if you light a candle on a space station, what happens? Because without gravity, heat doesn't rise. So even something as simple as a candle isn't going to work the same without gravity. Or how do you grow a flower when there's no sunshine and no gravity? And so we do a lot of experiments inside. And then the biggest experiment is looking at the Earth and going around the world 16 times every day. So getting to understand our planet Earth. And so when you're living on board a space station, you are a scientist and an explorer and a laboratory technician. And you're actually the laboratory animal too. You're like a laboratory mouse, you know, where you're doing experiments to understand what's going on with your own body. So, but then once in a while, when I was supposed to be asleep, I would steal a little free time. And that's when I would do the fun things, you know, like take pictures and talk to my family and write and write music and you know, make little videos and stuff. Because I didn't want to just be a worker. You know, I wanted to really understand and enjoy the experience also. So so I thought I don't want to come back from 6 months in space. And when people say, what did you do there? Say, well, not much. I got a lot of rest. You know, I wanted to come back tired, but having really challenged myself and done a lot of fun and interesting things. And when I got back to Earth after 6 months, I was tired, but I loved the experience.
And one more. Was it difficult for you to do experiments in space or not?
Some experiments are easier without gravity, and some are really, really hard. Like some are simple. You know, our sun makes a lot of radiation, and we're protected on it down here on the surface or in Kiev or wherever you are in Ukraine, because there's a lot of atmosphere above your head and a lot of clouds and water vapor in the air. And then the Earth has its magnetic field, and that protects us from all of the radiation from the sun. But on board a spaceship, you're above all the air and you're above a lot of the magnetic field. So you get more radiation. And so some of the experiments, like we have these long tubes of gel, and as the high energy radiation particles come into the gel, they leave a little streak in the gel, like a little meteor trail or a little comet trail. And so that type of experiment, you just need to set it up somewhere very carefully and then leave it for a month. And then after a month, come back and count all of the protons that went through it. And so that's an experiment that you can't even do on Earth. And so it's much easier to do in space. But some of the finicky ones, they're really hard to do without gravity. And you know, heat doesn't rise in space because there's no gravity to make heat rise. So things overheat all the time and change and behave differently. So imagine this. Imagine you're in a swimming pool and you're floating around out in the middle of a swimming pool and somebody starts throwing experiments at you and you have to conduct them while you're swimming out in a swimming pool. You know, some things are easier, but a lot of things are just harder because you're floating weightless. So yeah, it's hard, but it's also, it's the only place we can do a lot of those experiments. So that's just the way it is.
Okay, thank you, Chris. And the next will be Victoria Bortnik.
Hello, my name is Victoria, and I am really glad that I can speak to you because I'm interested in this topic, space. I like reading about space and watching videos. So can I ask you 2 questions?
Yes, please. Go ahead, Victoria.
Okay, and the first one, how was your first flight to space? And what did you like and dislike? Were you scared at the first time?
My first flight to space, Victoria, was on Space Shuttle Atlantis. And we launched out of Florida. And Victoria, imagine if you're lying in a chair on your back, you know, a chair that's where your face, where your belly button is pointed at the sky, you know, where your face is pointed at the sky. And you've been dreaming about it and practicing for it and studying for it, in my case, for 26 years, you know, from when I decided to be an astronaut until I was finally in Atlantis, ready to launch. It's a pretty exciting day. and a lot of things can go wrong, but you've been studying and practicing and learning so that even if things go wrong, you have a lot of plans and a lot of things you know what to do to help make the spaceship work. And then the engines start to light and it's super powerful and the whole vehicle shakes, and then you start getting crushed into your seat as it gets, it's so powerful because it's got to get away from Earth and push its way through the atmosphere. And you're just getting crushed heavier and heavier and shaken like crazy by the power of the space shuttle. You go through the speed of sound. I know someone was asking about the Concorde. You're higher and faster than the Concorde in a minute, and you're accelerating straight up. And then you get above the air and the sky goes from light blue to dark blue to black. And now you're out in the blackness of space and the engines are just getting going faster and faster and faster until you're so fast that you're already up to the speed of orbit. And then the engines shut off and you're instantaneously weightless. And that's just so cool, Victoria, to be weightless suddenly. It's like magic. And everybody laughs. And that's just the first 9 minutes. And now you're going to be weightless for, my first flight was only 8 days long. So you're going to be weightless for 8 days. I wish in the last 9 minutes, I could have gotten you to a place where now you could be weightless for the next 8 days. It's just so fun. And you have a million things to do, and you got to run the big robot arms and build stuff and do spacewalks and run all the experiments and fix everything that breaks. But it's super interesting and challenging. And the coolest thing is every chance you get, you can float to the window and watch the world go by. And you go, right across Ukraine in 1 minute, the whole country in a minute. And you can see the whole country of Ukraine just out the window, from one side to the other, just in a glance, all the way down,
really
the Black
enjoy
Sea and up to the mountains. And, it's beautiful. You can see the river going through Kiev and it's just gorgeous. And 40 minutes later, you're over Australia. It's just, and it's just so beautiful to see the world for what it is. And I know there's wicked, bad behavior going on in your home country right now, and war and awful things, but you get to see the rest of the world every 90 minutes too. And how people around the whole world are behaving. And so it gives you a real understanding of our entire planet and all of the 8 billion people on it and all of the different things we're doing. And so there's a huge privilege to that. So it's a magnificent feeling. And Victoria, I dreamed about it since I was younger than you are. And it was better than I dreamed it would be. And that's a pretty lucky thing when something in your life that you've been dreaming of a long time turns out to be better than you dreamed it would be. So yeah, it was a great experience. And I was lucky enough not to just do it on that first flight, but 3 different times.
It's cool that you enjoyed it. Okay, and the second question, what do you think about colonization on Mars? When will we go to Mars, in your opinion?
Yeah, so living somewhere besides the Earth, you can call it whatever you like, colonization, the word you chose, or whatever, just moving somewhere else. I grew up in a house with my brothers and sisters and my mom and my dad, and now I live somewhere else. And I've lived all around the world, and of course I've lived off the world. So I'm not sure where you might live during your life, but you're probably not going to stay in the same place you are right now. You'll probably, have lots of opportunity. And so some of those opportunities might be in some parts of the world that are a long way from everybody else. Like the people that set up this call, they live way up in a small town, way in the very far north, where there's only a few hundred people in their whole community. So that's a whole different way of living. And then there are 7 people living up in space right now on the space station. And so we've colonized space. We've settled in space. We've been living off the Earth on the space station for over 20 years. So where are we going to go next? And I think the logical place next is the moon, because it's only 3 days away. Mars is like 6 months away. And so that means it takes a year to get there and back. And if you're going to build a ship that can guaranteed take care of people, it's hard to make one that'll work for at least a year where nothing will go wrong. The moon is a better place to test things out and figure it out and learn what we need to learn. So I think we will be settling the moon for the next generation. And lots of countries are working on that right now. All the space agencies of the world are working on that. And we have rovers driving around on the moon, and we have satellites going around and around the moon, and lots of plans to go there. I work with several companies that are building hardware and stuff to settle on the moon. And so it's a really interesting time in history. Not only have we spread all over planet Earth and started to live on space stations orbiting the world and explored the other planets, but now our technology is good enough that we can start to live on the moon and then eventually soon on Mars. But we still have problems to solve. And we got lots of problems on Earth to solve, of course, but a little bit of what we're doing should be for exploring the rest of the universe. You know, you don't want to make it the only thing we're doing, but in amongst taking care of our problems on Earth, we also need to think about exploration and challenging ourselves. And so I think what you're going to see, Victoria, is, you know, people living on the space station, and then people starting to build and settle and then eventually live on the moon. And then once we've learned how to do that, then it should give us the experience and the confidence to be able to sail interplanetary all the way to Mars. Now we're doing it with robots, but hopefully during your lifetime, we'll also be having initial explorers, and maybe you can be one of them, and then initial settlers to start settling somewhere besides Earth. And it seems crazy, but it's a little bit crazy that, you know, you don't live where you were born. People always move somewhere else and spread out and want to try new things. And I think the moon and Mars, that's just sort of a natural extension of everybody's curiosity and desire to live a full life.
And Elon Musk claims that he goes to moon in 5-10 years, you know, and do you believe in his mission?
Well, he has done more in the last, 10 years in space flight than any other human being in history, as for one person. I mean, he created SpaceX, and look, he launches a rocket a week now, and he's far, far cheaper and safer than any other rocket on Earth. And he made all that happen. So it's pretty impressive. And he's not just building rocket ships, but he's teaching us all how to use electricity more efficiently and building electric cars and how to build much better batteries, which is really important. And then looking at, how the human brain can interface with computers better, because it's kind of silly to have to type with your fingers. That's a really slow way to communicate with a computer. And he's looking at how to deal with traffic jams, and maybe you can drill tunnels. He's dealing with a lot of interesting problems, and now Twitter. So I think we need people like that. He's not a perfect person. Elon Musk, he's just a person, and he does some stupid things, just like everybody, but he also does some great things. And so he's pretty impressive. And I think it's also important for him to stand up and say, we're going to Mars and we can settle Mars, because that inspires people and it makes them think big. But he's also solving all the little problems. And NASA has already decided that his rocket ship, which he calls Starship, that's the one that they are going to use to go to the moon. So, that's, if NASA thinks that he's right, then that's a pretty good vote of confidence. And they're giving him money to do the development and research. So yeah, I never believe everything anybody says. You always want to use your own brain and use your own judgment. but he has a very impressive track record. And so, and he's not done yet. I saw him a couple weeks ago in person, and I was really impressed with how he was thinking and talking and expressing himself. So yeah, we need people like that. They do a lot of good in the world, and they change our, we have a lot of people in history like that. And so yeah, it's an interesting time. But the important thing is to have your own dreams and to listen what other people are doing and think about it and learn about it and make your own conclusions and understanding of the world, and then choose how you are going to change yourself to do interesting and challenging things in life. To me, that is the really interesting path.
Thank you, Chris. The next question will be from Igor, and please, only one question, because we have so many questions from us, and I want that you will ask many questions. So please, Igor.
Thanks. When you trained before the flight, you were prepared for high overloads. Can you describe these feelings? Because I think only astronauts can describe it in this way.
Thanks, Igor. Yeah, it's when you're operating something like a rocket ship or a spaceship, it's complicated, but there's a lot of complicated things in life. But the trouble with a rocket ship or a spaceship is when things go bad, it happens very fast, and the consequences are really high. Like it might destroy the spaceship or the rocket ship, or it might threaten your own life or the lives of your crew. And so that makes it really important to know and understand how everything works. Because if you have, like, let's say right now, Igor, something happened in your house there where you're sitting, are you ready for it? Do you know, like, if there's a fire alarm, or if the power goes out, or if suddenly the plumbing starts leaking, or if who knows, or if there's an earthquake, or whatever, all sorts of things can happen. Are you ready to do the right thing? And if it's 3 o'clock in the morning and there's a fire alarm, have you practiced, and do you know what to do? And so what we do as astronauts, and what you need to do as a pilot also, is first you have to understand all of the detail, the machine. How does this work? How does a fire alarm work, and how does the fire extinguisher work, and how do I do all these things? You have to do all of the work to become competent and understand what's happening. But that's not enough. Then, Igor, you have to practice for things to go wrong. And most of the time, things are a little bit quiet, like while we're talking right now. And so use the quiet time to practice for things going wrong. And, have a practice, have a drill. Like, I don't know if you drive a motorcycle or a car yet, Igor, you probably do, but when you're driving a motorcycle or a car or something, you could have a flat tire, or you could have the engine fail, or you could have all sorts of problems. It's when things are working well, that's a good time to practice for things to go wrong. Or someone around you could have a medical problem. Someone could have a heart attack, or break their arm, or get something in their eye. And the time to worry about that isn't when it's going wrong, but think about it now, and then do the research and gain the competence and the skills. And I was an astronaut for 21 years, and all I really did was get ready for things to go wrong. So that when they did go wrong, when the rocket ship had a problem, or the spaceship, and we had some serious problems during my space flights, when they did go wrong, I wasn't panicked. I wasn't afraid. It was like, okay, I knew things would go wrong, and we practiced, and I have a plan. And this isn't exactly like we practiced, but I have some idea of what to do. And so whether it was medical or mechanical or software or whatever, we had skills on board. And I think, Igor, life is more interesting, and you're less afraid if you've spent the quiet time getting ready for the inevitability of things going wrong, because then you can relax a little bit and you can notice the beautiful things that are happening. If all you're ever doing is worried about things going wrong, then you're going to miss all the beautiful stuff that's happening because you'll be all tense and nervous. So yeah, I'd rather be calm and competent. So anyway, that's how astronauts treat life, and I think it allows life to be more fulfilling.
Thanks.
Lydia, I apologize. We can't go on forever here, so we need to decide, how many more questions. I did want to show some people something though, and while I was in space, I took pictures of the whole world, but I took this picture of Kiev, and I know I'm probably not saying it exactly right, but you can see it on my iPad here. If you look carefully, you can see the blackness of the river flowing through. This picture was taken in February on my third space flight, and you can see all the hills around and the city and the rivers and the ice and the snow. And I took thousands and thousands of pictures. What I'll do with this picture of Kiev, the people that organize this call, I'll make sure that I email them that picture so that everybody can get this astronaut's picture of Ukraine that I took in space, just so everybody can have it digitally.
Oh, it's cool. Thank you. It's very interesting. So can we ask you more questions? Do you have a time?
Yes, maybe 3 or 4 more questions, and then I'm sorry, but I have other things today that I have already signed up to do.
Of course. So 3 questions, yes?
Sure.
Okay. Софія, будь ласка, одне питаннячко.
Yes. I wanted to ask, what was the funniest thing in space that happened with you?
Sorry, Sophia, what was the
What was the funniest thing that happened?
The funniest thing?
Yes.
Well, one night we thought it would be fun to have a Hawaii party, as if we were all in Hawaii. Because why not, right? You could have a party however you want. You could all pretend you're in Africa or Australia. We thought, let's have I don't speak Hawaiian, but I think they call it a luau. So we decided to have a luau on the space station. But we'd all brought Hawaiian shirts, and we put on Hawaiian music, and we chose the food that seemed most Hawaiian, like dehydrated mango juice, and we had some chicken that was actually said Hawaiian chicken. So we got the thermostabilized Hawaiian chicken out. But one of the guys thought, you know what we need here at this? We need a Hawaiian dancer. And his name was Jeff Ashby, one of the guys on my crew. But he's like, how am I going to be a Hawaiian dancer up here on a spaceship? But he rummaged through all the garbage, and he found a big old crumpled piece of gold colored foil, and he made a dress out of that. And then he got this long brown mesh bag, and he put it on his head like a long big wig, but then he didn't have a bikini top like he was a Hawaiian woman dancer. And so he managed to get this bikini top, and then he was like, I need to be a woman. And so he got a couple little pudding cups to fill out his bikini top. He just looked so silly, but he knew he was being silly. He was just doing it for fun. And then when he came floating in to where we were all having our luau, and with the Hawaiian music, he brushed, because you're weightless, you always bump into things. He bumped into the hatch, and it popped open his bikini, and his little pudding cups came floating across the room. And it was just so funny and silly. And it was just people, having fun a long ways away from everybody else. And to me, it's really important. Don't just be a robot. Don't just do the work, but look for, it's okay to be silly and stupid and make fun of yourself, especially if it's so that everybody else can have a really good time. And to me, that was what we all, you can imagine how much we laughed. But every single day, it was fun, and there were joyful things happening. We had some very sad things happen too, and some very complicated things, but we also remembered to have fun every day too.
Thank you. The second question, Valeria, please.
Question: how do you brush in space your teeth?
how do you brush your teeth in space? Well, let's pretend that this is my toothbrush, okay? So let me see your teeth, Valeria. Show me your teeth.
Покажіть ваші зуби. Покажіть, так, посміхніться.
Покажи ваші зуби, да. Okay, yes, I see your teeth. So it's important to brush your teeth every day because, you know, they get dirty and they can get sick. So it's also important to brush your teeth on a spaceship. So we have toothbrushes, just like on Earth, and we have toothpaste, a tube of toothpaste, just like on Earth. And the toothbrush has a little Velcro thing on it. So it's Velcroed to the wall, and your toothpaste is Velcroed to the wall. And every morning and every night, I would get my toothpaste and my toothbrush, and then I'd take a bag of water, because obviously you can't have a sink because water would spray everywhere. But I'd have a bag of water and I'd squirt a tiny bit of water onto my toothbrush just so it'd be wet. And then I'd take a little toothpaste and put it on, and then I brush my teeth carefully. And I always brush my teeth for about as long as it takes to sing happy birthday. Because that's about, I just quietly sing it to myself because then I know how long I should brush my teeth. I make sure I get to all my teeth. But then when you're done, now you've got a mouthful of sort of soapy toothpaste and you got a toothbrush. So the toothbrush, I would just wipe off on a cloth and then Velcro back to the wall. But now I've got a mouthful of toothpaste. So what do? Well, I could spit it into a cloth like that. But now I've got sort of a wet cloth. And I could do that sometimes. And then I would just Velcro it to the wall and it would evaporate out again. And that would be okay. But also, toothpaste isn't poisonous, right? Obviously, if it were poisonous, it would kill us. So most of the time, I would just swallow my toothpaste because I would only use a little bit of toothpaste, so it wouldn't be so much. You don't need a lot. And so rather than make a mess of a cloth or something, I would normally just swallow my toothpaste. And so that's how I did it. And it worked good. I came back, all my teeth were fine. So I think it's important, even on a spaceship, to brush your teeth twice a day.
Thank you. It's amazing. And the last question will be from YouTube account. And I need to read you one very important thing. So our audience write to you. We invite you to Ukraine when the war ends. Would you like to come?
I would love to come to Ukraine when the war ends. I've traveled a lot and I've been a lot of different places. I've always wanted to go to Kiev and other places in the Ukraine. There are a lot of people from the Ukraine that live in Canada, of course. 120 years ago, when we were just opening up all of the farms in the west of Canada, all sorts of people moved from the Ukraine to Canada because they were good farmers and they knew how to grow things in a place like Canada. So there are lots of Ukrainians in Canada, but this Canadian has never been to Kiev or some of the cities in Ukraine. So thank you for the invitation. I would love to come and visit as soon as the world allows.
We will help you. And the last question, what is the most important thing for astronaut?
The most important thing for astronauts, it's to take care of each other. You are a team, right? You're a crew. You're a small group of people, and you're trying to do something that's really hard, and you're trying to do something that has danger. And the only way that you're going to succeed is if you work together. You obviously, you gain the skills and you make yourself as good as you can be, but that's not going to be enough. It's important to support the other people in your team and to help them be as good as they can be, and to keep that sense of purpose. You know, it's not just you, but what are we trying to do together? What does victory and success, what does it look like for us? How are we going to do this thing to be able to succeed at what we're trying to accomplish? And I thought about that every day. The most important change is always yourself. You know, you can change yourself whenever you like. You can start turning yourself into someone different whenever you like. And so that's necessary. But then think about the people around you and how you can help them do stuff so that you as a group can do stuff that otherwise people could only dream about. And astronauts are just lucky because we get to go explore the universe together, and it really helps us focus. But I learned a lot of things as an astronaut, I think, that have really helped me just being another person down here on the surface of the Earth as well. And so thank you, everybody, for inviting me in today. It's been delightful talking with you. Thank you for all the careful questions. I'll send this email picture that I took of Kiev, and I wish everybody lots of learning. I wish you peace. I wish you success in the things you're dreaming of, and I hope to get a chance to come to the Ukraine as soon as possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It was very interesting, and really thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I need
Thank
to
you,
sign
Chris,
off now.
from Ukraine.
Bye-bye. Be well.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye, thank you.
Вибачте, хто не встиг.
Люди, не засмучуйтеся, будь ласка, бо я знаю, що дуже багато хто хотів.
А буде ще одна зустріч така. Бо я хотіла запитати, чи та паста зубна не літає, і ще чи в космосі зручно там.
Кріс сказав, що літає. Кріс сказав, що якщо ти в тряпочку виплюнеш її і повісиш цю тряпочку, то вона потім розлетиться повсюди.
Окей. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Ми б самі були дуже раді, якби Кріс знайшов ще для нас час, але він дуже бізі. От. Але ми обов'язково запитаємо, обов'язково передамо, що вам сподобалося. Так, Юлія, ви можете вимкнути зараз самостійно свій мікрофончик. Юлечка. Ми вже завершили просто.
Я Володя, і ще хотів сказати до побачення.
До побачення, Володя. Любі, бувайте. Ми дякуємо, що ви були сьогодні з нами.
Бувайте.